Elongated heads have come up time and time again throughout history. Is there some sort of scientific or medical explanation? Or does this suggest that at some point, aliens walked among us? I'm Maddie Massey and I talk about weird and wacky science, so make sure you subscribe for more. We have found countless abnormally stretched and flattened skulls, as well as artworks depicting these weird elongated heads, going back more than 10,000 years. And there's evidence of this phenomenon on every continent. The general scientific consensus is that humans purposely stretched and flattened their skulls in a process called artificial cranial deformation. There are some alternative theories as well, but first let's get into how the skull stretching actually worked. The artificial cranial deformation process starts at birth. So when you're born, the 8 different bones in your skull are not actually fused together yet. There are soft spots called fontanelles in the gaps between the bones, and you can actually see them on the baby's head, which is kind of disgusting. This enables your skull to be flexible for childbirth because we all know that's a tight squeeze. While your skull was still soft, your parents would apply pressure in certain areas, for example, by wrapping your head tightly or by strapping your head to some sort of flat board. And your skull would grow in the path of least resistance, kind of like a muffin baking in a tin that only allows it to rise in one direction. Side note, babies can have unintentionally misshapen heads, either from childbirth or lying in the same position for too long. It's really common. One study says it actually happens in 45% of newborns, so it's pretty likely that you too would have had a weirdly shaped head at some point. This can resolve naturally or by putting the baby in different positions or giving the baby a special helmet to wear. Anyway, the constant pressure on the head during the first months or years of life would create this elongated or flattened head shape. You may be wondering, is this safe? Though there are still some communities practicing artificial cranial modification, it's mostly died out. So what we know is based on historical records and human remains. Some scientists say that as long as the overall volume inside the skull remains the same, the brain should be able to grow and develop without any problems. Also, many of the deformed skulls that have been found have belonged to adults, so they have been able to survive past childhood at least. But other scientists say that artificial cranial deformation would have had negative impacts on cognitive ability, movement, vision, and behavior. So this head stretching was quite an inconvenient and potentially dangerous practice. Why did so many cultures across the world do it? There are 3 main theories. Number 1, having a deformed head was a sign of social belonging. Different social groups would have different modifications, kind of like tribal tattoos or piercings. Number 2, it was a sign of beauty. That sounds really weird, but I guess we humans in modern times do pretty weird stuff in search of beauty. And number 3, it was a way to distinguish the elite members of society. For example, some members of the ancient Egyptian royal family are famous for having these elongated heads, and it's possible they had this because of artificial cranial deformation. And there is a 4th alternative theory. When these elongated skulls have been found around the world, some people speculated that they belonged to grey aliens or greys. These creatures are described as having grey skin, huge eyes, and elongated heads. But DNA testing of the deformed skulls shows that they were humans, with no evidence that they were extraterrestrial beings. But according to some, this could still be evidence that aliens were here on Earth. Perhaps the humans and the aliens made contact early on, and then later the humans tried to mimic their unique head shape with this artificial cranial deformation. I personally am not going for this theory, but it's definitely fun to talk about. Anyway, I'd love to hear from you why you think so many cultures had elongated heads. And also, if you think that there's a type of body modification that we do now that is just as extreme as artificial cranial deformation.